Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us at the Enhance Your World show. I am your host, Chris Alba. My co host for today, Larkin, will be on momentarily. We are looking forward to sharing some insights, some information, and awareness today about um, abandonment and betrayal, both for self. Sometimes we may call that compromise. And then when things don't work out the way we hope them to be, we realize that we had this insight or we had this awareness in our through our past. We saw things that we ignored, because we wanted to believe the best in something or someone, and it didn't turn out the way we wanted to. So that gives us an opportunity to self-reflect, right? Because things didn't work out the way that we had hoped. And then also how to handle the rejection, the abandonment, the betrayal, those types of things within our relationships, both romantically, personally, and professionally. So I'm really excited about the show. I'm looking forward to sharing some stories and sharing some insights as Larkin goes to come on soon. We'll start that conversation off. So, you know, I can tell you over the last 2 years, I've been healing from actually for 20 some years, I've been trying to heal from this repetitive cycle in my life to where we create businesses, we create friendships. I created allies, those kind of networks and those types of things to do something greater than myself. Because I've always been in the awareness for most of my life that nobody is able or capable of living my life but me. And I've been wanting to be the best version of myself and overcome my past traumas, right? And most of them stem from childhood, but then they are recreated in our other relationships. That gives us access to the deeper healing. It's not necessarily the individual that we feel like hurt us or even ourselves. Because, later in the awakening process, I discovered for myself that no one could abandon or betray me, but I could myself. I could choose to not listen to my gut, my intuition, my emotions, the dismiss experiences that I witnessed. I could do that because it was an unconditional loving vibration, and I understood it. I saw my own behaviors and other people's behaviors. So I understood where I did that in my own life as I was growing up, because someone didn't want to walk the path that I wanted to walk, or they wanted to do something different than I did. And many times it caused a division in a relationship, and most of the time it was fairly mutual. Um, my past relationship, on the other hand, hurt me in ways, opened me up to my rawness and the things that were going on in my life beyond my egoic identification in ways that I had never experienced before. Even though a lot of the experiences, like the suicidal ideation and things like that, that came with it were familiar. Um, you know, I've struggled with depression most of my life. As a teenager, I was medicated by the pharmaceutical and doctors and my parents. And I can remember being so angry at not being able to feel anything. And you say, how can you be angry if you can't feel anything? Well, that was the thing. I wanted to feel, and I couldn't. And because of those things, so when I got off of those things, I really started working on my relationship skills, self-development, and developed this sense of self, this identity, the habits, the routines of how to improve myself on a day-to-day basis. And I always lead with the best foot forward. I was trying to do your best when things didn't work out, accept the accountability, responsibility for the part that I played, and say, how can we repair this? How can we fix this? How can we move on together? Which, over the last 10 years, professionally, what I've really been trying to teach and share is unconditional love, because we're all needed in this lifetime. We're all needed on this planet. We all contain a piece of consciousness. We might call it a perception perspective. But that is part of the whole, the oneness that everyone wants to claim that they're a part of, yet they're dividing our humanity by things that they like or dislike. They are elevating themselves or other people. And this is creating a lot of division in our humanity, and why we talk on the show so much about getting back into nature, because nature in itself doesn't have a rule book. It has guidelines on how to not only survive, but how to thrive. And that usually takes interdependence, if you will, or a harmonious relationship. See, we can look at our nature and see that how we as a humanity are trying to control nature, and all it can do is fight back and create chaos, is what we would think, right? There's an earthquake that kills a bunch of people. There's a tsunami or hurricane or storms, or these natural occurring things that happen, and that is kind of Mother Nature's way of cleansing herself. It's like a big purge, and unfortunately, the reason she's doing that is because she's trying to survive. Humanity is the only species on the planet that has the ability to create both harmony and disharmony. And what causes disharmony? Ask yourself that. It, to me, is an unwillingness to be compassionate and empathetic, curious, kind, loving, generous. And not because we're obligated to, because if we're faking it until we're making it, so we feel obligated that we have to be this way or that way till we get what we want, that mask is going to eventually fall off. And that's usually been my experience of when relationships go through the forging process. And it's where sometimes one or both parties in the relationship gets overstimulated, over emotional, and that energy spews out. And the goal, I think, for many of us is not to control our emotional energy, but to be able to just witness it and be able to direct it in a healthy way. For many years, I tried to squelch my anger because I didn't want to hurt anybody. But the more I tried to stay away from that emotion, the more energetic energy went into that cup until it overflowed. And then I would get reactionally angry or frustrated or stressed out or whatever. And then sometimes I would act out of my character, because most of the time I was this one way. But then if you hit me in the right way or said the right thing, or whatever, I could go off. And what I've learned through my relationships is the stronger the relationship, the less we try to fix each other. The more we try to hold space for one another, try to understand one another, the more curious we get with one another, the more we actually come into unity with not only ourselves, but that other person, because our relationships are mirrors to ourselves. So when someone makes me mad or someone makes me sad, it's really going on within me. I'm able to see it with my other senses because it's outside of me. Because a lot of times I've held that within, and I don't have that level of awareness yet. Because what is awareness? It's both the observation of self, our true self, of the thing that we're totally all capable of. We're all capable of helping. We're all capable of hurting. We're all capable of being constructive. We're all capable of being destructive. And we can watch our entertainment and see that all day long. That's part of the subconscious programming that's going on. With the social media and all that kind of stuff. It might be funny, it might be whatever, but it's separating. And so I'm challenging you to look at those behaviors and say, are you abandoning your true self? Are you betraying who you truly are in those times? Or is that an aspect of yourself that you're looking to recover, that you're looking to heal? Because the multidimensional realities that we all experience in separate perceptions and perspectives, right? All that going on cannot be changed. It's like a radio station. It's always going on. It's a question of, are we tuning into it? And part of my trauma and part of my healing has been vocalizing my feelings, my thoughts, without the attachment of emotion. Making it this is just where I am right now. When I would try to share in my past about an experience or my feelings or what was going on or my thoughts or whatever, and I didn't feel heard, I reacted out of a childhood wound from when I was a child, when I was telling my parents that I didn't feel well, mentally, emotionally, and even physically, and they didn't listen to me. I would tell stories about things that happened and they wouldn't believe me. And I know parents do this all the time. When we're young, we can see entities and spirits and things that, because we're closer to the source than our conditioned adult self, and a kid comes and talks to you about it, and you just, oh, that's just your imaginary friend. That's just, and because we haven't had that culture in the West or in North America, or at least the United States, that honors that. Because what our culture has been for the last couple hundred years is about authoritarian morality, saying that we are all supposed to be this way or that way. When in fact, it's been my experience that when I effed up, when I made a mistake, when I misstepped, when I did something that wasn't in the highest good, I knew that internally. I felt it. And instead of being able to just say, this is my moral compass, I'm not going to lie, I'm not going to deceive, I'm not going to manipulate, I'm not going to lie, I'm not going to do these things because I have a choice not to. Yes, sometimes it's easier to lie. Sometimes it's easier to use someone or something or some opportunity to somehow project you into this other realm of what you believe your reality is supposed to be that it's not. Um, um, so you do those things thinking that that's the right thing to do. And after the experience, after the outcome, you realize where you've made your mistakes. And that's why we always talk about being grateful for the things that work and don't work for you in that time, because those are learning lessons. No one can teach us those experiences and learning lessons outside of the experience of life itself. That's why they call the Earth School in some teachings. And so I know we're talking about abandonment and betrayal, and the reason that I'm trying to share all this stuff is when I was betrayed and abandoned by those that I cared, loved, and thought were people that were gonna have my back and didn't, what that taught me was self-reliance. It also taught me self-protection. But that protection came from a fear, an insecurity, a thing that I didn't want to experience again. And so this illusion, this demon, if you will, right? This dark shadow, the shadow self, comes to existence. And when does a demon, when does an entity, when does any of the things that are beyond the physical realm, even a bully, when do those things stop? When we stand there and we face it head on. You want to know how to quit being an addict? You face it. You face the feelings, you face the behaviors, you face all the things. And as a former addict and substance abuser, I can tell you things just fall away then. When you start focusing on, I'm going to start caring for myself like I want someone else to care for me. I'm going to do the things for me to demonstrate to others how to care for me. Then you'll get to see how someone truly is. And some of us are here, I truly believe in my heart of hearts. I've had dreams about this for, over 3 years. The reason that I was in the relationship with the person that I was in the relationship with was because I was to teach her how to love unconditionally, because my mom has been this example from day one for me. To a fault in some times. But I've watched her as we all are walking together in this healing journey. Her standing up for herself, saying, I'm not going to tolerate this type of behavior. I'm not going to be talked to in this way, and those kind of things. And we can do that by setting, I guess, boundaries are one way of self-protection, but having that within ourselves. So when someone's yelling at us, one, they're in pain. So that's an easy way to be empathetic and compassionate, because they're reacting that way because they're looking for a level of acceptance. And when we can accept that they're frustrated and angry and all those kind of things, and yet we don't react, we hold a larger container so their shit doesn't spill. The greatest gift that any of my healer friends have done for me in the long-term thing was just let me spew. Let me share my heart. Let me share my joys. Let me share my pain. Let me share all of this stuff. Please don't hang on to it. Because as soon as I share it, it's going to help change everything for me. It's an energy. You know, that's why we work within the gauge method here at Enhancing Your World. Gratitude, awareness, unity, growth, and energy. Because everything is consciousness. Everything is energy. Everything informs us of something. Even if that's a rock, right? That's information. Hi, Larkin. How are you? Oh, she just bounced out.
Good. No, I haven't myself in studio yet. I mean, I was in studio, but you got to be on stage. For those of you who don't know, I'm good. Yeah. We had a surprise visitor stop by the house. How are you? Keep going, please. Continue.
I'm doing pretty well. The point that I was trying to make with all of this is like, if we're gonna create a unified humanity of consciousness, we have to learn to accept that everybody perceives and holds a certain perspective based on what they believe reality is. And as long as we can do it with an openness and a kindness and a compassion and an empathy, and walk with somebody through their stuff, which is the opposite of what we said the name of the show, right? Abandonment and betrayal. Because that's what happens. People just give up. It gets too much for them, and they're like, okay, see you later, adios, right? We do it to ourselves. I want to quit smoking, or I want to live a healthier lifestyle, or I want to meditate, or I want to do whatever it is, right? And then we abandon ourselves or betray ourselves and what we want by going, I just don't feel like it today. It's not convenient. And then we wonder why we haven't developed the discipline and the strength and the resiliency and those things throughout our life to allow us to actually be in a vibrational state that we desire to be in, regardless of the external environment. Because what controls the external environment? How we relate to it. If somebody was to take my physical freedoms away, it would suck. I'm not saying that it wouldn't suck, but that would also give me opportunities that I wouldn't be able to have if I had to live independently and care for myself. And that's kind of the idea. What are your thoughts on this, Larkin?
Wow. I think this is, as always, we talk about such expansive concepts.
Yeah.
And they're really all connected. And I think that's important for people to recognize, whether you guys are watching this live or on the rebroadcast. I know I've had people message me lately and say, I saw your replay with Chris, or I saw you and Chris in your broadcast, and wow, it touched on so many subjects that are related and relatable and are not typically discussed. And this is one that is, both we can learn both from what it is we are manifesting, as you mentioned. What we have going on inside is going to be what's creating our manifested reality.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be shaping our perception. And we also can look at this as our soul journey and our mental and emotional journey. So all of these aspects are included. And relationships, as you were saying, a lot of people, I mean, you and I have had this discussion on here before, like, when is it okay to throw in the towel and how it's just a choice. And I think one of the things that's important to keep in mind is that regardless, I mean, there is no right or wrong there. But regardless, we can all admit that our human relationships especially make our lives complicated.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's the person at the grocery store, the car in front of you that's just cut you off, whether it's a teacher that made an impact in your life or taught you a hard lesson, whether it's a relative or a romantic relationship or friendship, we can all agree that whenever you're dealing with other humans, it's complicated. And if we look at things as though obstacles are opportunities, then we understand that these relationships all give us the opportunity to better get to know ourselves.
Mm.
Yes, we learn about others, but we also, when we're think about it, when you're by yourself, you feel completely free to just be who you are, right? Or whatever that is. Like, maybe
Right.
not care what you're wearing.
Right.
You could eat the whole bag of cookies. Some people sit down on the couch and just let it rip, like they don't care.
Right.
But as soon as you're with other people, no matter who that person is or those people are, there's an element of self-consciousness there. Even if you're with the people you're the very most comfortable with, let's say you're with the people you're the very most comfortable with, that you would basically do everything you do when you were alone in front of that person or with that person. There's still something to push against, isn't there?
Mm-hmm.
And what is that something to push against? I think that's something for people to really look into, because when there's a lot of complex ways in which our discussion about feeling abandoned or betrayed falls into that. And they are, yes, there is some real action that is involved there in other people's choices. But as we talked about a couple weeks ago, how we respond, the meaning we choose to give to it is always ours.
Mm-hmm.
Usually when we're abandoned or we're, what was the other word, betrayed,
Mm-hmm.
we obviously feel as though something has been done to us. And that's typically the initial feeling. You don't typically feel, you're typically feeling that, and you're kind of going through that as a trauma. We're oftentimes, unless we're feeling really guilty or we're trying to convince the person to stay or to apologize and to fix things, typically, we're feeling as a victim, aren't we? If we feel betrayed or abandoned, we're feeling like we're a victim.
Right.
And oftentimes it's not until this happens or the aftermath that perhaps we recognize our role in this.
Right.
Even if it was just staying in the relationship too long.
Right.
Or waiting for the other person to change.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to say this before I flip it back over to you, Chris, because I think this is really pertinent. And I hope the people in the replay get this far in this video. The victim mentality is something that's very hard for us to be aware of. We're typically not aware of it. We're just aware of, oh my God, I'm being hurt, or I'm hurt, or whatever. But by the time it comes to that, not always, but typically, we don't see our role, as I said, in the betrayal or in the what's the other word? Sorry.
The abandonment and the betrayal.
Abandonment. Sorry, I was thinking it was two B's. No. We typically don't see that. And the signs are always there first.
Yep.
Before we are betrayed or abandoned, the signs are always there. And this is where extreme self-awareness is so important, because if we can get out of our head enough to really observe the things we don't want to observe, we're so busy, and this is where we're really trying to avoid pain and suffering, is a good example of being a problem. Stop trying to avoid pain and suffering. when we do that, we get ourselves in deeper.
Mm-hmm.
When we avoid, for example, recognizing that maybe a partner isn't prioritizing us, maybe they're just staying with us because, you know, they need a place to live, or maybe they're staying with us because we make them look good, or maybe they're staying with us because they don't want to be alone while they're looking for someone else.
Right.
That's not their problem. Your problem in that relationship is your problem.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're afraid that's happening, you know that's happening, but you're making excuses for them, what happens is, in the end, you're going to get hurt worse.
Right.
When we try to avoid pain and suffering, we get hurt worse. And, you know, the truth is the truth of whatever a situation is. So, as Dr. Wayne Dyer said, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
Right.
You know, it's let's go for authenticity. Let's go for truth. Let's go for, you know, not making up in our head another person's potential scenario to grow and evolve. And I see this a lot with the women I coach. I mean, I have some men that are this way too, but women really fall into this category, you know, having this hope and this optimism for a relationship. But it usually comes down to them wanting the guy to change or their partner to change.
Right.
And you know, that's dangerous because first of all there is the now. And what we have going on right now is what we have going on. If, you know, I just told a client this a few weeks ago, if a person really wants to change and evolve or really wants that relationship, they will.
Mm-hmm.
But when we go for years with it in our head, oh, it can just be this way, we can just be together if. My question to you is, are they making that effort? Do they have that same desire? Do you see them talking about it or getting out of going to the extremes they need to? Do you have a shared vision? So I just want to throw this out there to people because, you know, I feel like when there's abandonment and betrayal, we often, those of us that are on the receiving end of that, we had a choice too, and we often don't see it. But we often are so blinded by love or the way the relationship or the friendship is that, as you said, everyone's living in their own reality, Chris. You're right. So if their reality of your relationship and their world with you in it is vastly different than yours and you don't see it, you know, you're setting yourself up for a wild surprise. That's why, Chris, when you messaged me and you said, how about abandon? Have you ever been betrayed and abandoned, Larkin? I said, have I? You know, like, yeah. You know,
yeah. I mean,
without it.
You know, I've self-abandoned and betrayed more than I have others.
There you go.
You know, because that allowed the other to abandon or betray. You know, when we're having a feeling, which aren't factual, they're feelings.
Yes,
right?
Thank you.
That things aren't right, that things are out of harmony, that one's given more than the other, or whatever that dynamic is, right? And somebody brings it up into a conversation of just saying, I need to share this with you. And it's neutral toned. There's no blaming. There's no projecting. There's no any of that stuff. But just, this is how I'm feeling. If they can't hold space for that without redirecting you or excusing or blaming you or something else, that is a precursor. That they will burn the village to save themselves. There's like a lack of curiosity, right? Like, how can we do this? We all have the same visions. We all have we see it a lot in the spiritual community, which is the most ironic thing ever, I think. because we're all trying to be so spiritual, nothing affects us and yada, yada, yada. We just cut people out of our lives and we just move on and we fart rainbows and, cotton candy. But while we're really harming ourselves and other people with these illusions of grandeur and that we're better than somebody else because we practice this and they don't. Those types of trying to think of the word. Well, let's talk about self-actualization. Self-actualization is always stepping into the highest version of ourselves. So when we fuck up, we say, hey, we fucked up. I'm sorry. How can I make it better? How can I recover? How can I repair our relationship? Or how can we would be a better scenario, a better label to use, because it's the responsibility of the partnership, of the relationship to work it out. It's never on one person.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a beautiful summary, Chris. And the thing is that, again, I go back to, relationships, obstacles are opportunities, and relationships are always going to have obstacles, even if they're your perfect ideal relationship and everything fits perfectly and, oh, it's heaven, and if think about it, you have your own challenges, you're going to have challenges with others, but this is an opportunity for us, for you as an individual, to get to know yourself better. So if I take what you just shared and I go back to what I was talking about, where, when we have something to push against, when our ego has something to push against, then we have this, like little mini identity crisis. Right? It's like, oh, everything's fine as long as you want to go to the Italian restaurant. But as soon as you have a person, that other person's like, oh, well, no, I'd rather go to the German restaurant. Right? And that's just a micro version of the way our relationships go. So if we break down, what is spiritual awakening? What is self-actualization? And by the way, guys, this has absolutely nothing to do with any spiritual practice or religion that you're in. I will just say that because I find that, as Chris was saying, a lot of times we hide behind this. We hide behind our ideas of, oh, remember, guys, it all goes back to identity. Every bit of this goes back to our identity. So when we're talking about, when we're talking about something to push against, when you have a relationship with someone, it's no longer just you. Now you re-identify yourself in and with that relationship. They make you feel, oh, when I'm with this person, I'm beautiful and I'm sexy. And when I'm with that person, I'm smart and I'm funny. And when I'm with this person, I'm always doing the wrong thing. When I'm with that person, I'm their hero. Right? We identify, and we often choose to leave or stay, and how we behave according to how we feel. And as Eckhart Tolle talks about, conscious awakening is all about disidentifying with our mind. That means disidentifying with the concepts of who we think we are. And when we're in relationships, they give us these opportunities to create more concepts, to play with these concepts. What happens when those concepts are changed? You feel like your boat has been tipped over and you're in the water with no life vest, like kind of sprawling like you do when you're
right. Yeah. It's like walking on ice, right? Like, oh, what the hell happened? I'm on the ground now.
Right.
I'm hurt.
Yeah, and you might not even be really drowning, guys.
Right.
You might just be feeling like you are, right? So, but this is all good. This is important. This is why I have my clients read The Power of Now and Stillness Speaks, because it's better to get there first. It's better to take yourself there first. Practice this disidentification. Get down to Conscious awakening is a stripping away of all this. It's being in human form with the mind, with the identification, without having to identify with it and react. So if someone calls you and says, hey, or someone stands you up, or you find someone's betrayed you in some way,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe they misunderstand what you're doing, or they can't communicate well with you, guess what? I mean, here's a shocker. It's okay. Because guess what? If you weren't being shoved to identify in that moment, let's say your partner's like, I don't know if I'm really liking this relationship. All of a sudden, they're rocking your identity, aren't they? They're shaking your whole boat.
Mm-hmm.
But what is true freedom? This kind of goes into a more broad topic, but really conscious awakening is the ultimate freedom in human form.
Mm-hmm.
As free as you're going to be before you return to non-physical. So what is true freedom? It's freedom and liberation of the mind. So what if you could be in that relationship and that person says, I'm really unhappy with this. I don't know what I'm going to do about it. Or what if you found out, okay, that person betrayed me, or, wow, that person abandoned me. What if, just consider this, guys, what if you had the freedom to be like, wow, yeah, that's really painful. And look objectively at what your identity was with that person.
Mm-hmm.
But what is that pain actually doing? That pain is actually revealing your liberation.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually revealing who you are when you weren't in the confines of the made up make-believe construct of your relationship with that person, because guaranteed their concept is not the same as yours.
Right.
What
Absolutely.
you're doing innocently, they see you doing is intentionally. Why? Because just like you, they have the mental and emotional baggage.
Mm-hmm.
That 95% of your mind I'm always talking about, you guys are probably like, shut up. It's creating your life. That's where all that shit is stored.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they think you're doing it intentionally, because everyone else they dated or went out with did it intentionally. Did they really?
Right.
Or when did that start? When did they start believing that? Right. I hope you guys are getting a glimmer of, Chris's topic today is so powerful. But what it really leads us back to is, what's your ultimate freedom? And how do these relationships lead us back to it? Because truth be told, things are always working out for us.
Right.
And the pain is an indicator of what's in the way between you and what you really want. That's all the pain and struggle and suffering really is. I know that's hard to imagine, but
No, I mean, I just shared this with someone yesterday or today or whatever. But the when I was in my darkest stuff, coming back from what my relationship breakup, and how it all unfolded, I was in a deep depression and a very dark place, and my suicidal thoughts returned, and I hadn't been there for over a decade, right? So those were pretty like, oh wow, like here you are again, like they didn't go away, they were still here, like, oh, here they are. But what was different this time for me was what part of me, meaning my identification, needed to die so I could truly live. Because when I attempted suicide in the past, I say attempt, I did it. The outcome wasn't that I left this physical plane. I did for a few days. I came back. Apparently, the story of my ex-wife told me, like, I laid on the couch for like 5 days or something like that and didn't really move. But she could wake me up. So she knew I was still alive, but like I was somewhere else. And when I came back, like things switched for me, and it went from where I was looking internally all the time going, this doesn't make sense. This doesn't make sense. Like, these people were supposed to love me and they're treating me this way, you know, all those things, to like, I'm just going to go and create my own life. I'm going to go out. I'm going to do these things. I'm going to be of service. I'm going to create a business. I'm going to do all these things because I have something to give. And wouldn't it be a shame that I didn't give it all away by the time my life actually ended?
Wow. Yeah, I can't believe it's so cool you're talking about this, because last night I came across 2 videos that I wanted to share. And I think I did share them actually to my Powerful Choices Awareness Network page. One of them, which we can get to in another topic, was talking all about, what if we just lived the way we wanted to? What if we just found a way to not live the way society dictated? Which you can do.
Well, you would be living like the elites.
Well, yeah, and you can do it without living off the grid. Mm-hmm. But you have to release these concepts. So This guy's great because he talked about this. But the second one was exactly what you're talking about, where the author of this video had gotten an email from a guy that wanted to commit suicide. He was just like, I want to end my life. This whole video is his response to all these ways that you can end your life, this version of it, without killing your physical body.
Right.
And the video was just, it's such a brilliant concept, because we can do, it happens to us and we can do it on our own. I can think of 2 times for sure that I know that I have died in this lifetime. And I'm not the same person that this body was born as. My soul's the same. My personality is the same. You can look at my baby pictures. I look the same. But I mean, the one day I literally remember dying. I remember that die before you die experience. And, I was traumatized so much by something at a young age that had shaped me. And it sounds silly. I mean, it sounds silly to people if you talk about it. Like, if I tell what it is, it sounds silly to people, because I was 16 or I was 17. I had met a soulmate. I had this whole human vision of what our life was going to be together. It was that soul type bond, which for me is everything. And so there was no way, there was no way to imagine not having this person in my life. There was no way to imagine the betrayal that I felt and the shock that I had felt. And yes, people say, okay, it was your first love and you were young. No, it's more than that. It's that it was that soul connection. And I just remember the soul connection was so strong. I remember going back in my house. I literally knelt on my floor. Some of you guys might relate to this. And I don't know how long I cried, but I remember the floor moving out from under me. And mind you, I'm a dimension walker, so I might sound a little dramatic when I see these, but I literally energetically felt my soul shift. I switched paradigms during those hours because the floor fell away. I remember feeling like I'm going to fall through the floor, because that beautiful turquoise carpet faded and there was just infinite black beneath it. And it was almost like my whole, like if you think about the Truman Show, and if they had switched the sets out, it was like everything got switched out while I was sitting there crying. And it felt like I was falling, like just this infinite. And, that's also, though, when I learned, my friends, that when it hurts so bad, if you just invite it to hurt more, if you just, it was so bad, I didn't know what to do. And I remember just saying, what do I do? And my guides and my higher self were like, just allow it. Invite it. There's nothing else you can do, so invite it to hurt more.
Right.
And I did. And surprisingly, it was the only relief I got.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, mind you, this wasn't over. This trauma went on for years, but I got up from that floor, and the Larkin that had been in that relationship no longer was.
Mm-hmm.
And I see remnants of that now. You don't see the same joy through me. You see joy coming through me in a different way.
Right.
I walked away from that more serious. I walked away from that with a whole different concept of self and relationships and everything. So understand that this can happen both through traumatic situations, through elating situations, and oftentimes you don't even recognize it. This happens naturally,
Mm-hmm.
but you can also choose it.
Mm-hmm.
You have to really mean it. You can say, okay, I'm done with this life. Time to create a new one. And as Dr. Joe Dispenza says, what that means is if you want to transform, as a transformational specialist, I can't imagine how many times I've said this. You have to transform your personality first, right? And so that means as a human, either letting go of or transforming the concepts of yourself. Mm-hmm. Letting go of those concepts of who you believe yourself to be. And we need to do that gradually, Chris, but I think people don't know to do that, mm-hmm. which is why it often happens all at once and we get hit with it. Mm-hmm. Life says, look, you've outgrown this version of yourself. You have to become someone else.
Right.
There is no choice there. We have to keep growing.
Right. It's the serpent shedding its skin, and allowing us to handle more, to experience more, just talking about emotions, and it's not about controlling your emotion or channeling that energy. It's about being able to hold space for it and understand the messages behind it. And when we get curious about that, like, why am I feeling this way? Why am I experiencing this? We don't need external voices and opinions. Like, it's going to come from within. And that's part of that self-actualization thing. Other people can have other perspectives of how it affected them. And you'll understand once you've reached a certain level, and I don't know where it is because I don't think there's a line for anybody. Initiation, like once you've done that, once you've been initiated into this, you're never going to experience it again. But you get to a certain level and then you understand, like, your perception of me is your perception. As long as I don't own it, it doesn't affect me. But there might be some insight. There might be some things there that your ego isn't wanting you to look at. So it's easier to justify keeping someone away from you. I understand when people are butting heads or there's really bad addiction or abuse or something like that, you need space. You absolutely do, because you can't heal. In a toxic environment. It's really hard because as you start making progress, that toxicity will continue. You get really resilient, but I don't know if you fully heal. Because you're constantly picking yourself up again. I don't know what you did, but man, our viewership just jumped through the roof.
my two of my pages weren't hooked up.
Oh, okay.
3 of them. So that's what happened.
Well, cool.
Yeah. So go ahead.
So, being self-actualized, you're aware of both the light and the shadow. Mm-hmm. It's a really empowering thing sometimes to realize, like, I can harm as much as I can help. by my choices, by my reactions, right? My automatic responses. Those sometimes hurt people way more than we would intend to hurt somebody. And then that's when we become aware of like, hey, there's something going on in here, because I don't typically lash out that way unless I'm like a wounded animal. You know, dogs, you know, I got bit by a dog last week or whatever. It just nipped me. And I'm talking to the owner and I'm totally calm, and he couldn't, he was blown away. And I was like, he was just doing his job. I'm not mad at him. He was just doing his job protecting his home. That's it. It was my fault for not knowing this animal and not being fearful to a level of awareness that couldn't happen. And once it happened, you know, nothing. I mean, I didn't even really get a bruise because, I mean, it was a warning bite, you know, just like, hey, you know, and I yelled, I told him no, and he listened to me then. Like, he backed up because, like, you know, then my instinct to protect myself kicked in, like, hey, I don't want to harm you, but then you come at me again. And, you know, and I explained to this guy, like, you know, my new side gig is driving deliveries. And the guy was complaining about how he wasn't getting deliveries. Like, it was in the notes. Like, he was upset that his deliveries weren't coming on time or whatnot. So after that experience, when I called him to say, hey, I know why your packages aren't being delivered, it's because of your dogs. It's got nothing to do with, you know, because typically the policy is with this delivery company is that if there's a loose dog in a yard, we're to call the owner and ask him to put it inside, not get out of the van.
And that's smart.
Yeah. You know, but again, they have such a workload on us delivering, you know, we're there till like, you know, 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night trying to get all the packages delivered. And so, you know, there is kind of this level of awareness of like, and discernment of like, is this dog going to be cool? You know, and I can kind of just go do my thing real quick, and I don't have to call somebody and try to get a hold of them and send text messages and, you know, all that kind of stuff to make sure that, you know, this 30-second stop is now going to turn into a 10-minute stop.
Yes.
So there's
deliveries. It's very, I mean, people don't realize it takes a long time. You're 30 seconds to a minute behind on one house or one shipment. And man, it adds hours to your route.
Yeah. Hours. I mean, when you're dropping 160 some, you know, stops, I mean, like, you know, and then of course your, you know, technology today in these vans and things like that for like Amazon and all these other delivery companies, they monitor everything. Mm-hmm. Like, even if you take a hand off to scratch your nose, like, it's making a mark that your hand left the wheel and you could be distracted by something.
Yep.
So like, there's like this high pressure to like follow all the speed limits and all the complete full stops, and, you know, and like, this is your job. Like, if you're not doing that, then you're going to be replaceable. So there is a pressure to perform. Hey, Keith. There is a pressure to perform or to hold a certain standard, but then there also is a level of discernment and surrender. You know, it's like, is it going to be the end of the world if I don't get these done? No. Like, sorry.
I have to laugh at this. That when you're telling the story about the dog in the package, first of all, I have to laugh that these drivers are just like, oh, hell no. And they're just like passing this guy up. Okay? I know there's consequences for packages you don't deliver. So they're choosing that over this.
Right.
You know, for me, I don't know, I'd probably set it right outside the gate or something. Of course, if it's a loose dog.
Yeah, he got me at the mailbox.
Oh,
So
okay.
like our app only, we'll have to be in a certain proximity of the building before it will say
Okay.
that we're there. So like
Right.
I tried to drop it off at the mailbox because that's what he said to do.
Right.
And they bit me as I was at the mailbox. So like I literally called him, was like, your packages are at your mailbox. I can't check that I delivered them because I can't get close enough to your house to say that I did. So are you home so you can sign for them? I'm in my driver's seat of my van.
And your dog just
I'm not messing with them anymore, like,
Yeah.
and then he's like, oh man, like I even have a kennel over here that I was putting together, and I understand out in the country it's a little different than it is in the city. When you're in suburbia, everybody has those dogs that sound really vicious behind the door. I mean, I was a door-to-door salesman for years, and never really had much of an issue with the dogs in suburbia. It was more of the country dogs that are allowed to actually be dogs.
Right.
Exactly. And to do their job, and they're rewarded for doing their job, because that's why they have them most likely.
Right.
To be a noisemaker for protection. I mean, if you have a pack of Great Pyrenees, it's probably because you have some kind of livestock or something, and they're to kill the coyotes and the predators and all that kind of stuff. There was a purpose behind owning a dog one day, other than it makes me happy.
Right. Absolutely.
And they still have that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it's I don't know how we fell down this rabbit hole, but it's abandoning our true nature, right? That makes us think that we're better or worse than somebody else. Same thing as a dog. A dog is a dog. And it's how they're cared for that reflects that those acceptable behaviors. Do they just bark, and then once you step out, they're like, oh, hey buddy, come pet me, or are they really there to be, a security level of security?
Well, I have to point out, though, I think it's interesting because 2 weeks ago when we were on here and you were telling me you were in training for this, the guy you were with, he says, absolutely terrified of dogs. And it was funny because you got on here and you were like, it's okay, buddy. Like, they're fine. They're not like, you were like trying to help him like revive his fear of dogs. And then you get on your own route and you're barely off the boat, man. You get bit. Great.
Yeah.
A serious bite. But I mean, it is humorous, it is kind of funny. You were on there sharing that with us. So it's interesting how things come full circle. And for those of you that just popped on or you haven't been listening, we're talking about betrayal and abandonment of ourselves to ourselves, and of others to us, and of us to others. And somehow we fell in this rabbit hole, but we started talking about self-actualization, self-identity, identifying with ourselves, and really how my summary of it is how everything in our life and our world, including our relationships, especially our relationships, push against that identity, push against, they force us to have concepts, right? So it's like if you take what do you call it, one of those like sheer color palettes, and maybe it's green, or sorry, maybe it's blue, but then you put it in front of a yellow wall and it becomes green. Right? That's how you are. That's how all of us are. We've got this self-concept, but then when we're around other people or in other circumstances, we're very different, right? I mean, I'm very friendly and outgoing and I talk to people, but I'm a total introvert, and people don't believe that. Right. But you put me in a big party or a group and I'm like, okay, like I've had enough. Like I got to get out of here. That's that situation pushing against my identity, my personality as a person, right? So we've got our center, which is why it's so important to be alone, to spend time alone and get to know yourself. But then how do you really get to know yourself? When the world is pushing in on you in those relationships. And it's like, oh, boy, I thought I was this type of person, but in that situation, I don't really like myself. I'm like this.
Right.
Or how are you when you're really afraid? Have any of you ever really been terrified? Have you ever been like afraid for your life? Don't you come out of that situation or during the situation like I haven't been like, that's how I am? I mean, like, because everyone's like, oh, I would do this in this situation.
Yeah.
No. Once your adrenaline gets going, your body has this amazing survival capacity. Dude, you go on autopilot. There isn't no, sorry, I'm speaking this way, but I'm doing it on purpose. Ain't no, this is how it's going to work. In all my years of martial arts, one of the funniest things I ever, as I got into doing it after 10, 15 years, I started to realize how funny it was because people would always come in to train. And it was like, well, I'd be talking to friends or colleagues who weren't into that, who weren't doing it seriously. Well, if somebody came up to me like that, I would, if I got in a fight, I would just drop them one. I'm like, you won't be thinking about it. Think about it. If it's a real fight, it's over like that. Your body on autopilot and you know what you're doing or you don't.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's not like, okay, here we go. Like, we're going to do this. We're going to dance.
There's a guy with a knife. I'm going to do this and do this and do this. No.
Yeah.
It never works that way, which is why, it always scared me because people would say, oh, well, I have a knife under my car. That's why I run with a knife in my belt. Right. That's why, and the people I knew that did that knew how to use that knife. They knew the martial arts. They knew and understood. They had less than 2 moves to make the right decision.
Right.
And their body was already trained to do it.
Right.
And if it wasn't, so we make up these concepts, guys, in our heads about our identity, but we also make up these concepts about what we're going to do in certain situations and how we're going to be. Right. And the best thing you can do is realize that's not how it never plays out the way you think it's going to play out, because you've got to understand that your mind makes things up. It makes up these scenarios and this concept based on your perception.
Right.
And that's not how it works. It doesn't work that way.
Right. Well, and I was thinking when we fell down that rabbit hole, I abandoned, idea, in that moment, right? Like, I'm safe. It's fine. I have great energy. Like dogs, they don't have.
Everything you were telling that
guy. they know you're not a threat. Yada yada yada. Like. And then, that happened, right? And it was like, okay, I learned, and immediately when, it happened, I mean, I did, I got in the truck, I laughed.
And why the guy was so paranoid, because he's been doing this longer than you, and he's probably had that 100 times.
Well, he got bit when he was a little kid.
I know, but
he had this fear. Yeah, he had this fear.
I can see why it's perpetuated. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if he's there. I haven't seen him since the day he trained me. But the thing that was true was I got bit. I laughed about it once I was in the safety, like you thinking that you were just gonna be just no problem, like you weren't gonna have an issue, like, that got you. Okay, nipped in the butt right there. Valid. I checked myself. I knew I wasn't bleeding, and I calmly reached out to the guy and had a conversation with him, had him come out. Of course, he's angry with his dogs and starts, being, at least in front of me, like he was going to discipline them. And I was like, one, they don't know what they did already.
Right.
Like, that situation's over. They're not hanging on like, I just bit this guy. You know, like,
yeah, they're not like talking about it. What are we gonna do?
yeah. Dogs don't do that. You know, they're
dude, why didn't you break the skin? Well,
yeah. Why didn't you get, you know, good teamwork? Because the little dogs were like biting on my pant leg, right? Like, and I was just like,
those are the ones that get you.
Yeah, and those were the ones that I was paying attention to, because they're the ones that usually do get you, you know? Like, they go for your pant leg, and then the next thing you know, they got your ankle bone in your but or your Achilles, your Achilles tendon, that's always lovely too. But it was the big one that nipped me in the butt, and I'm grateful that I didn't get hurt. I really hope that the guy didn't hurt the dogs after I left. I really tried to diffuse it, and just, was very, they were doing their job. It's fine, but future going on, the reason you're not getting your packages is because we're told not to deliver when there's dogs out. So we're to call you, and if they call or don't call, because again, it's a time thing. So there is a level of acceptance, of things not getting delivered because of a time restraint or something like that. We're even advised, like, when it's raining or the driveway.
Christy. Welcome.
The driveway is tough not to risk it, because you could risk your whole route for one package. And so there's a little bit of discernment that goes into that. But how that all relates, to our topic here, exactly, Mark. Who let the dogs out? And how it relates to being abandoned or betrayed is typically, we say that something is okay when it's not.
Absolutely.
We excuse our behavior or behavior of someone else for a time until we can no longer take it anymore. And then we react with emotionality on top of it. And when we start sharing those awarenesses with that energetic emotionality, it's a frequency. And that's typically where arguments get started. Because it's not like, hey man, or hey, like, you did this, it hurt my feelings, like, just want to let you know, like, it really bothered me when, I shared that the other day and you dismissed me or whatever. Like, if you can come from that level and that place, most people are compassionate and understanding enough to be like, to hear it. But if you're like, you selfish son of a, you did this and all they can do is try to defend themselves because they are feeling attacked.
Yeah, and really, that's such a good concept. I mean, there's two things I want to throw in there. If you feel abandoned or betrayed, it doesn't really mean you are. Maybe you are. A lot of times, and then the other thing is, Chris is alluding to, hi Kim, welcome. Hey, C Mark. What I think is really important though is, number one, I want to add in there, it's a choice. It's because of a choice. If you're involved in it, it always has to do with, I'm just kind of describing it in a different way that Chris did, with the choices that you've made or not made. Choice is about not just actions, but maybe choices are also how you perceive things or the meaning you've given to things. And as Chris was talking about earlier, oftentimes when we are reacting instead of responding, we are hurting other people. So if our feelings get hurt, we don't realize it. But think about it. In any relationship you've ever had, if your feelings get hurt or someone else does something maybe snippety or not too nice to you, a lot of times it's because they're hurt and they don't know how to express it. And or that's their habit, their belief system, their self-protection mechanism. I have over the years, like, especially, I mean, a lot of men will do this too, because they've been taught to not be in touch with their feelings. So they'll lash out at you and maybe say something unkind, or, do a tit for tat instead of saying it. And, like what I've learned is, what I started doing with my husband was thinking about, okay, what did I do? Did I do or say something that would have hurt his feelings? And then I'll ask, did I do or say something that hurt your feelings? And that took me some time and some self-control, because the reaction is to start a fight to defend yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, and typically I'll just get a, well, yes, you did this. It's like, oh. And then I have to make a mental note, right? And so people go about like hurting each other just because we're not getting down to the core, right? I'm all about stripping down to the core here.
Right.
So when Chris and I were sharing the dog stories and the stripping away and all these different circumstances, it's very important that that we understand and we relate to how we are responding and reacting when life puts us in different circumstances, which of course are because of our choices to some level. But it always starts before where you guys think the issue starts, right? And I'm going to use I'll get to your comment in a second, Kim. I'm going to use another dog story since we were doing that. A friend of mine from high school, a really good friend, he started dating this girl, and they'd gone on this trip, and they had this huge female bloodhound. I'd never been around bloodhounds before. I mean, I've worked at the zoo with lions and tigers and all sorts of, big animals. But I'd never been around a bloodhound. I'm not afraid of dogs. I love dogs. Put me in a pack of wolves, I don't care. But they had found this puppy on a vacation, and they brought this puppy home. Well, this bloodhound was very protective of this puppy. And I was helping them move into this huge old 1800s house in northern Kentucky, right across the river. You can see it when you go over the bridge. And this dog, out of all the 8 of us that were moving them into this house, for some reason, she did not like me. I don't know if she looked at me and said, I'm going to find who I think is the alpha female in this group. There were only 3 of us women there. I don't know what she was doing, but she didn't like me. And that's very atypical. Dogs love me. And they finally put her in the back because she kept running right up to me, and they're big. I mean, these dogs are big. She could put her nose right here. And finally Mike said, well, I'm going to just put her out back. It's just safer. And I was like, no. I kept saying, it's fine. It's fine. Dogs love me. It's okay. And he's going, this wasn't the first time Mike and I had been around this. We got into school together, and I was always like, things were fine. He was like, yeah. Puts her out back, and you could see her when I'd walk out the front door to the car. She'd race to that fence, and I mean, her eyes never left me. She found a way in. Every time she saw I'd come back to the house, she knew how. She opened the back door and came back in, and she come running up the hall. And one time I had this big container of laundry detergent, and she was rushing me. Thank God I held it up as a barrier. And then he walked in the door, and he said, oh, what are you doing in here? Are you, let me put her out back. I said, no, it's fine. Because everyone else had been ignoring it. Well, I said that 3 or 4 times. No, it's fine. Well, guess what? He put her back out back, and she must have gotten back in. I remember I walked in the door. I went to the little room on the left. I squatted down to set something down, but guess what? That's where the puppy was. And the next thing you know, like that, I had teeth here and teeth here. I did not know that their mouths were that big, but she had my entire head in her mouth. And let me tell you, it is one of the times in my life I've been the most terrified, because if I didn't even want to breathe.
Right.
Because I knew she didn't want me to move. And if there hadn't been and luckily Mike came in, and he came around the corner, and he was like, called her so-and-so. But I sat there for a good 30 seconds. She just held me there. And I was squatting down. You know how hard it is to squat down on your toes and just not wiggle?
Oh, right.
I mean, but here's the thing, guys. Here's my point, since we're doing dog stories for this today. Do you know how much in those 30 seconds I learned about myself? And I learned that exactly what Chris was trying to demonstrate, that a lot of that was my choices. I could have said, I am not going back in that house. I mean, I knew she kept getting in unless you close both doors and lock the back door. I am not going back in that, because I told Mike, she's after me. Like, I know she's after me, but I might have said that, but what did I do about it? And I heard Chris, when I first got on, he was mentioning about people actually following through and doing stuff. What is it? I know Kim and Chrissy, you guys hear me say this all the time. What is it you are doing about your current state? What is it you are doing about your current situation? What is it you are doing about what you want to change, transform, manifest? Are you thinking about it, which is your ego's way of pretending that you're doing something? It's your ego's way of convincing you, oh, but you're working on it in your head. You're thinking about it. You're figuring it out. Or are you doing something? Okay, this is very important. And, you know, even when I get on these discovery calls, some of the most enthusiastic people, if they decide, oh, hey, I want to work with you, or, oh, I want to work with so-and-so, thanks for this recommendation. They go off, they want to work with somebody. Oftentimes you'll find that that person disappears for a while. They ghost you, or they ghost whoever they were going to, or they avoid YouTube because the recommendation was listen to these YouTube videos, you know, with this person. Why do they do that? Because of resistance. Mm-hmm. Because they're afraid of what they want. They're afraid of the transformation that has to happen to get what they want. And so my message to you guys today in all of this, where does this abandonment and betrayal lead to? And how is it having to do with, you know, revealing your authentic self and self-actualization, is when the opportunities come and you recognize them, jump on it. Jump on it, because lessons are repeated until learned. So you're going to be where you are until you choose something different. Period. End of story. You're the one with free will. That's the way it goes.
And you can't avoid it because it's going to show up in a different way. You know, like a lot of people I've worked with, they're like, well, I'm just not going to do this anymore, or I'm just not going to do that anymore. You know, it happens a lot with recovery, right? So like, oh, you know, I can't drink, or I can't do cocaine, or I can't do these things because it's not good for me. But let me be addicted to this sport that's causing this harm in my life or destroying my relation, whatever it could be, you know, or, you know, it's understanding that what needs to be transformed will always be there, because until the work is done, and then it's not an issue anymore. And things can happen here and just like, oh, look at that. Like, I didn't react this time. Like, ooh, someone called me names, or someone cut me off in traffic, or, you know, I mean, that's some of the fun stuff, right? Like, yeah, exactly, Kim. A runner's high is still a high, you know, and people chase that, you know, like they're obsessed, you know, like, I have to run. Like, I was about that with meditation. I have to meditate or I'm not centered, you know, because life's just pulling me all these different ways. But, you know, like it is a helpful practice. But when it was an addiction,
habits that are good.
Right. Yeah. But the addiction part of it is like, I didn't meditate today. I'm all disembobulated, you know, I'm all over the place because I didn't get to meditate my 4 hours that I normally do, or whatever it is. You know, I didn't get to go to the gym, or I didn't get to. That's just a way of not taking responsibility that there's a little hurt piece in us that we're reacting out of, and we're making an excuse for it.
Yeah, I mean, this is, again, guys, you know, before we close up, I want to really summarize all these things that we talk about and we share. Again, I think Chris took us right to this again, which is, it all boils down to Are you able to distinguish between your human mind and your thoughts, your egoic self, which you need, it's an important aspect of you, and your authenticity, your intuition, which is the voice of your soul? That's where the freedom lies.
Mm-hmm.
And it really, every live that we have, you can take back to that distinction. Okay. And all of these things you have to cultivate: the bad habits, the addictions, the good habits, the transformations. The relationships you have are a habit. The health you have is a result, yeah, sure, some of it's genetics, but of your habits. Whatever challenges you have, whatever struggles and suffering you have. And I love that Chris really started out talking about this today. He brought this into our attention because I'm always really honing in on this because it's so important. Struggles and suffering are opportunities. And we are so conditioned and trained that, oh my God, things are bad. Run away from this. That's not good. Things aren't going the way I want. Why aren't things working out for me? Look what life's doing to me. Life isn't doing anything to you. Life is responding to you based on where you are. And because things are always working out for your good, anything that is uncomfortable or is an obstacle or is painful or is a struggle or suffering, you can choose your way out of, but you're not aware of the choices. And we're here to try to remind you, you're never stuck. You have choices. You even have choices in abandonment and betrayal.
Mm-hmm.
Because those things could not happen unless you had allowed them unknowingly, right? This is part of our journey for learning. And usually we insert the protection mechanisms instead of the awareness to make a wiser choice, a new choice, because we don't like making different choices. And, our thought habits and patterns are addictions as well.
Mm-hmm.
Everything in your life is habits and repetition because you're human. So as long as you're human, you have to take whatever consciousness, you're connected to, that you're aware of. But you have to understand that should be running that 95% of your mind you're unaware of. That's why you guys are saying, but I want my life this way, and I keep trying to do this, but that keeps happening, and I don't seem to be able to change that. This is why you're not changing it. Because you have to make different choices. You have to create a whole new different belief system in that 95% of your mind. Because since that 95% of your mind you are unaware of, guess what? Of course you don't know why it's not working. The part of your mind, most of it that you are unaware of, is running your life. So you have to pull back and retrain, reprogram those habits.
Mm-hmm. And that's where isolation and all that kind of stuff can be helpful practices, to get the stillness, to, get the energy down a little bit. So it's a little easier to not respond or react, but observe, right? And then that allows us the information that we need to continue on our journey. And I know, Larkin, we were talking about discovery calls and how to take this to the next step. So because I know we love to do this every week and share these ideas and concepts, but we're always wanting to, how do we go deeper? And so I know we had talked about it. I don't know if you have it available, but you're linked to your discovery calls, your free discovery calls, so people can see in the comments, after the broadcast, how to schedule a one-on-one with you to have a conversation about how to heal, to overcome, how to harmonize the things that may be causing some pain, right? Because I have yet to meet somebody that's like, my life is so great, I'm so happy. They always have, especially here in America, the sense of entitlement, that it should be more than what it is, right? So
Absolutely.
somebody is financially independent, and just for an example, in this moment, unless the system collapses, they have enough means, right? Enough numbers in a computer somewhere that they can move how they want. Um, so they have this sense of that, but at the same time, there's a sense of entitlement to have more or to do more, right? Because that's our purpose as human beings, is to be of service. So even if you have all your finances taken care of, then you're going to want to volunteer your time away. So there's going to be trials, there's going to be tribulations, there's going to be that. No one is sitting. I mean, even the people that I've seen that claim to be fully awakened, right? They've reached that pinnacle of human evolution, right? So they've claimed, which is interesting, because if they actually had, would they actually have to tell you about it? Because you would see it, right? But they're still trying to help people get there, right? Which is just another form of that cycle, of that entitlement. I was watching something earlier, and we'll get off of here. But it was talking about how people are starting to date overseas now rather in the United States, because the Americans are so toxic with entitlement. They think that just showing up is enough. Like, I'm here. I'm in the relationship. I sit around and I don't do anything, to help the relationship grow and expand and all that kind of stuff. But I'm here, so take care of me. Make sure that I have all the things that I want, do all the things that I want you to do. And if not, then I'm going to abandon you. And then I'm going to betray you by telling everyone that how bad of a person you are. And it's been my experience. And I've lost friends over this. So I'm not saying that it doesn't happen. Or I didn't lose friends. I realized that they weren't my friend at this point. That the people who truly know you won't believe it.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't matter what anyone else does.
Right. Absolutely.
So the only way we can truly be abandoned and betrayed is act out of who we truly want to be.
Absolutely. That's so powerful. That's so powerful.
I had a friend share with me, my ex was sharing stuff, whatever. And I laughed and I said, well, that's good for her. I'm sure some of the things that she said could be kind of accurate. Okay, thanks. And I just went on about my day. And I realized in that moment that by not feeding it, I had come to peace with it. Okay, that's how she's behaving. That's how she's acting. That's okay. That's her. That's not me.
That's so powerful. I want to post this up here for just a second. Kim, I don't know if you're still on here, but Kim says, I think I'm between transition as grieving some of the old. Nothing worth it is easy. Now, I'm going to argue that for a minute, Kim. Okay. Transition is good. But I want to remind you of a couple things, and it's tied into what Chris was just talking about as well. First of all, remember that the egoic self is the only aspect that is in this time and space construct. The real you is beyond time and space. So yes, you're here to experience this time-space experience, but let's think about what the word grieving is. The word grieving is to hang on to the perception of experiences you've had that we call memories. and they're only perceptual. Do you know how many memories and beliefs and experiences we hang on to and make a part of our identity that ruin our lives? Everyone I date always cheats on me. Okay. Well, first of all, yeah, that's partly your problem because you haven't learned not to choose that. So you're going to go, I'm not saying you, Kim, I'm saying in people, in relationships, this is my example. They're going to go person after person after person after person, and they're going to repeat. Whatever you keep focusing on, Kim, and everybody else on here, you will keep manifesting. So when you are grieving, we have a particular meaning we associate the word grieving with, but what you're actually saying is, I'm hanging on to the old shit. I don't want to let go of the old perceptions of what I had. People say, well, I lost my dog or I lost my husband and I'm grieving. I'm not mocking that. But you have to understand what grieving actually means. When you're saying grieving, you're putting a halt on living. Your egoic self is saying, your mind, which is the same as ego, as Eckhart Tolle says, your ego is saying, ooh, here's an opportunity for me to keep you prisoner in one little spot, whether it's mentally, emotionally, physically, whatever it is. I'm going to use this as an excuse to keep you here as long as I can so that I can stay in charge, because the more emotions I can build up, the more habits I can use to keep you right here grieving, the more control I have over you, the less you're willing to get out of your comfort zone, the less you're willing to move forward, the less you're willing to create change and transformation, the more stuck you're going to feel. So it's not wrong that you're saying you're in this transition as grieving some of the old, but my question to you would be, why grieve it? And people will say to me, I mean, I've coached for 15 years. I know what they say. I can't help it. I'm grieving. It's painful. No, it's a choice. It's a choice you don't know you have. One of the things that Chris and I both do with our coaching clients is we teach them to take those emotions and those beliefs and transform them into fuel for something else. It's just energy. Mm-hmm. So take the fuel of the grieving. And you might say, well, I'm working out of it. I said I'm transitioning out of it. How long do you want to take? I mean, transition. Take that energy and use it for something else. I mean, for me personally, when I'm in pain, I use it constructively. I turn it into something else. Maybe you turn it into anger first. And then you use that as fuel for motivation. But every emotion you have is just the mind and the body. It's just energy. Mm-hmm. And the other thing I just want to bring up here is when we say nothing worth it is easy, that you're writing yourself a prescription, Kim. That's a prescription. That's not true for me. Some of the best things were the easiest.
And we didn't realize them until we were grieving it.
Exactly. Some of the most valuable things, the most worth it things are the easiest.
Yeah.
So I mean, I've done this for so long that when I look at what people write and I hear what they say, I can tell you immediately what's ego and what's their consciousness. And the consciousness is usually a little tiny glimmer in between of something that they think or say. Usually doesn't even get to come out in words because it's taken over by ego so fast. But nothing worth it is easy, Kim, is your belief. And I can guarantee you from coaching as long as I have that is holding you back. It means every time you have something you think is worth it that you want, you push it, like you get close to it and you push it 40 feet away, just out of reach. And then you run after it, or you think about how to get there. And as soon as you get close, you push it away again. Or you put it off. I'm going to wait. I got to wait for this. I can't do this until I do that. Self-limitations. Nothing worth it is easy, to me, tells me that your ego, that's one of the ways your ego is holding you prisoner. And that is a belief system in that 95% of your mind I'm talking about that you're unaware of. And whether you know it or not, you are being held right there by that one belief. That says everything that you want is hard for you to get. Everything that's worth anything is going to be hard and create struggle and suffering and more effort. And so, might as well wait a little bit. I'm just saying. I'm glad you wrote that because everybody needs to hear this. Right. This is why I tell my reading clients, you guys all need some mindset work. We all do, because we're raised the way Chris was just talking about. We're raised to follow whatever we're being told to think and believe. And because we're only aware of 5% of our mind, it's easy. It's easy for society to, all they got to do is put a thought out there. We all breed it with one another. And until you guys are willing to step out of that pot, and that means take action, that means stop procrastinating. Procrastination is just resistance. Whatever it is you're not taking action on, do it now. It's like standing on the edge of the helicopter when they're saying, you're going to parachute jump and you're afraid to jump. That would be me. You put it off and you put it off and you put it off. Get it over with. You're either getting back in the helicopter or you're going over the edge to do the parachute jump. But you know where the hell is? The hell is in the anticipation of the indecision, sitting on the edge of the helicopter, trying to make a decision, terrified about what it's going to be like. The path to hell is paved with indecision. It's one of my favorite quotes. Thank you for this share, Kim. I appreciate that.
Keith, happy birthday to your beloveds. And I know they've left this physical realm, but the fact that you're holding on to them and keeping their special dates and all that stuff in your life shows a testament of your love towards you and what you've had for them. It's lovely. So thanks for sharing that with us as well. Yeah, right.
I do want to, I want to put this up there quick because this is what Chris was talking about, guys. That if we have this unrealistic expectation, I never used to like to use that word, but people all the time, if things aren't, you guys all need to go like to a third world country or go live out in the middle of nowhere for a month. Really, everybody should, because the truth is that you're right. We have this unrealistic expectation, and it's based on things that aren't even real. Images of people we think have these perfect lives. You think just because somebody has 5 Ferraris and 6 Teslas, a helicopter, a private jet, 10 multi-million-dollar mansions, 3 boats, and they own an island, that their life is perfect. You know what? Life is better with money. I will give you that.
Ask Epstein and P. Diddy.
Yeah. It's easier with money.
Well, I even heard a thing about Justin Bieber wrote a song about it. I don't listen to that type of music, so I never heard it before. But now that this news topic has come up, he shared it. And that is coming from the entertainment industry. That is absolutely how they control you. They keep you at the bottom for so long that you're willing to do whatever it takes to be known and to achieve some level of success. And then they hold you hostage by that. They hold you hostage by that. You don't play the game of Hollywood, which is the imagination factory of the elite, because who finances this? They hold you hostage, and you won't get casted. You'll be blacklisted if you don't play their game. As good as they are, as amazing people as they try to be, all that kind of stuff on so many different fronts. We're all human, but the problem is, and I've said this for a decade or more, the only thing that the people in control fear more is the loss of control.
Absolutely.
Because that's what they have. It's just like someone having all this material wealth. What are they afraid of? losing it. Or the opposite, people don't actually like them for them, they like them for their stuff. Those, I mean, from my wealthy friends and clients and all that, those were the two things that they had the hardest time with, you know, is I don't want to make a mistake and lose everything that I have. And do these people actually generally care for me, or and they just like my stuff? They like that I can take them to the game or whatever it is. And you know, and you know, that is true. You know, even me in relationships, you know, I would much rather work on building my healthy relationships before building an empire, professional empire, because once you're at that vibration, you're gonna attract all different types. And a lot of people are not sure of how to get it themselves, so they rely on other people's stuff to create that in their life.
And so this concept of perfection, guys, can relate to us or it can relate to others.
Mm-hmm.
But I just, you know, the reality check here is, if you strip away everything, if you strip away, I want you just to imagine for a minute, what if you didn't constantly have this hunger for what it is that you wanted? You know, I mean, I you know, I started out in all of this helping people manifest what they wanted. But let's remember that to want means, you know, Abraham Hicks says every subject is two subjects. To
Mm-hmm.
want means to be in want, to be in a state of want, which means to be in a state of lacking, which is why the Buddhist monks always taught, want for nothing and you shall have everything. Well, that doesn't sound fun to a Westerner who wants everything, who is bombarded by the hormones that social media gets us, the high that it gives us, all the marketing, all the advertising. We're raising our kids that if they don't have their own room and they don't have the latest sneakers and they don't keep up with the latest fashion and they don't this and that, and they haven't seen that movie, that they're not cool, that they're nobody. They're associating that with their identity. And all of us listening here can rewind back to even where this influenced me. And I had two teacher parents who weren't that way at all. I mean, you know, my lifestyle was very different than all my little friends I went to school with. And it still got through to me through the music, through the interactions with my wonderful friends. This concept of always needing to be more, do more, have more. It doesn't leave you alone. You know, and we need to understand these are man-made fake structures. Right? So we have all these people that are depressed. They are full of anxiety. They're a nervous wreck. Their nervous system is literally living in survival mode for no reason that's real, for no real reason. And, you know, we have things around us that can humble us, but we are always protecting ourselves from that. We're always protecting ourselves from that being humbled, from that reality check. And, you know, what happens if we get one and then we're, oh, I'm never going to do this again. Oh, I'm going to be this way from now on. Really, does that last? It doesn't. Because you go back to, again, guys, I cannot emphasize this enough. If you don't reprogram that 95% of your mind you are unaware of, forget about change, forget about transformation, forget about creating the new life. You have to be willing to make the intrinsic shifts. And You know, that's why I'm so picky about who I work with and who I coach. I do not want to work with everyone. I have no idea what the real percentage is. I would guess that about 90% of people will say, yeah, I'm serious. I really want to change. I want what I want. I want to transform. I'll do whatever it takes. But I can say from coaching and inviting people in and making mistakes in who I invited in to work with, you find excuses. You find reasons. You're excited at first, and then, which is the whole point why you need coaching. Because we didn't need coaching 100 years ago. We didn't even need it 50 years ago. We need it now because the outside world is coaching us constantly. It is destroying our concepts of self. It is smothering our ability to hear our intuition. So why do I believe in authentic coaching now? Because as a human being, you need some sort of community. You need some sort of outside support and guidance that is in alignment with your authentic self, with your soul, with your intuition, not with your ego. You get off this broadcast, you are jumping right back into the river with the piranhas because it's everywhere. It's in your favorite country song. Oh, I hear people all the time. I listen to music because it comforts me. It makes me feel better. Yeah, really? What kind of music do you listen to? Does it have words?
Right.
You're just brainwashing yourself.
Yeah.
Unless it's the Buddhist chants, Om Mani Padma, I'm telling you right now, it's brainwashing.
Right.
Oh, I sleep with the TV on all night because I'm a nervous wreck. Yeah. What are you doing? You're programming the subconscious mind. And when you wake up in the morning, you feel better because you've stayed on this high all night listening to TV. But what's really happened to your nervous system?
Right.
You now have a new level of programming. And your subconscious is, gotta go get my coffee. Gotta do this. Gotta. Now if you want, what do you want? Is my question. If you want freedom to be who you are, you need to get some authentic outside support. This is not me trying to sell us. Go somewhere else if you want, but find a community that's going to hold you reliable and accountable for creating transformation and following through, because it's easy once we get, if we get pumped up enough, we get excited to make transformations to get out of that comfort zone, but most people don't stay there. If you don't have somebody to answer to and somebody guiding you and somebody who's been there and done that, and you don't have a community that's struggling through the same thing, I'm telling you, because I've done it, 6 months, a year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, you're going to go, oh my God, I'm right where I was 15 years ago. I want the same things. I'm struggling with the same things. I have the same questions. My circumstances have changed form, but my struggles are the same. So my question to you today is, what are you going to do about that? Are you? I mean, less than 5% of people do something about it. Are you going to be one of those people? I don't know. That's been a passion of mine for a really long time. Because it doesn't stop, guys. I mean, Chris and I have to keep, it's not like, oh, Chris and I have transformed and now we're fine. No, it's a lifelong process. So you need to have the tools, techniques, and processes to constantly be able to not wait until life throws you over the cliff to try to get that parachute open.
Right.
Have those tools, techniques, and processes ahead of time so you can begin living intentionally. And that means you probably have some catch-up work to do first.
Right.
I mean, we're doing all this for free. We obviously care about you guys transforming. It's not like we have 1,000 ads out there. We spend most of our time doing this for free. And then, survive on whatever clients we get or whatever we do. But the point is that if you guys don't make the powerful choices necessary for you, how is our world going to improve and transform? It happens one person at a time.
Fantastic show. Wow. We almost did 2 shows today.
I know. More time. I need to get moving. I see people have more comments.
Yeah, I mean, we could dude, we should probably just wrap it up.
Yeah, Chris, I get on a roll a lot. I mean, Mark, I get on a roll a lot. But it's true, guys. This is what it's about. This is what it's about. I mean, this is why Chris and I are like, well, we could go on and on and on about this.
Mm-hmm.
Where does the conversation end and your choice and action begin? What are you going to do when you get off of here today that is different than what you've done in the past 6 months? Where are you going to, start taking action where you're just thinking about it? Because our ego convinces us if we're thinking about it, we're doing something about it. No, you're not. No, you're not. What are you choosing that's different? Are you getting different results? Do you have a different philosophy? Are you comfortable where you weren't comfortable before? I mean, it's up to you what you want to do, but do something, guys. Do something different. Anything.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
So we don't have to have a show next week because we did this one. Oh, sorry. We did 2 shows today. So
well, we can make up for the one that when I'm out of the country. How about that? We'll just rebroadcast it. But and that is something that I wouldn't have normally done. Even though I've always wanted to go out of the country and see other things, but I have too much going on. I need to be here. I don't want to disappoint, the viewers. I don't want to not have my meditation circle. People count on me, that kind of thing. So, I didn't allow myself to take these expeditions until recently. And, I'm grateful that I did. I would have never taken this gig delivering. I spent most of my teenage years in my 20s and 30s trying to avoid the traditional route and the systems and wanted to live as an entrepreneur and free and creative and all those various different things. So me going into that was a conscious choice for my own healing, and also to learn how to help communicate with people that are at that level. How do we walk in a good way each and every day? It's taking the opportunities as they're presented to us. So thanks, Mark, for the confirmation. And Larkin, do you have anything else to say?
No. I think I've said enough. I think what seems like not much to us is a lot for people that haven't heard this before. And I think a lot of people, the broadcast is so long. I think some of you heard the beginning, some of you heard the end. If you're curious, go back and listen to the whole thing. But I think our bottom line is you have powerful choices that you don't realize you have. And the quicker you can become aware of them and just, understand where you need to make different choices, the better it's going to be. Everybody's in a hurry for change and transformation. Well, we've just told you what you need to do. And if you want help and support, message one of us for a discovery call.
Right.
This is what we do. I know we have a bunch more wonderful comments on here. I'm going to read through them, and if I need to get back to them. We did see your comments, guys, but it has been 2 hours, and we both have to get off. I have some more work I have to do. But I want to thank you all for tuning in, and please don't forget to share. I know I said I had nothing to say. Please don't forget to share this with people that you think could benefit. We are trying to grow our YouTube page. So if you haven't already, check out our YouTube page and go ahead and subscribe to that. We haven't worked a lot on that, but that is something we really want to get going, because it's going to give us the opportunity to reach a lot more people who we think need to hear these messages.
Indeed. Thanks again for everybody that's tuning in live, that is going to watch the broadcast. And thank you for being you. The world is the way it is because we are the way we are, and we can only evolve or grow when we're willing to accept that and choose to walk together, or work together, and communicate together as one human being, in one human race, right? And care for each other and our planet, because how we care for our planet is a very unconscious way of how we're actually caring for ourselves. So, with that, much love and gratitude. See you next week, Wednesday at 1 p.m. Thanks so much.